So here is a speech from Adolf Hitler from August 13th, 1920, or part of it anyway. And here he is mocking the Zionist claim that they want a state for Jews, when in reality they already control the world. So Hitler stated, thus we can immediately understand why the entire Zionist state and its founding are nothing more than a comedy. The chief rabbi has now assured in Jerusalem, quote, the most important thing would not be the founding of this state, for it is very doubtful whether this can be realized now. But this is also not necessary, for Judaism needs this city at most to have a spiritual and ideological center. Materially and actually, we, the Jews, have already become the masters of the whole series of states today. We dominate them financially, economically, and also politically, unquote. Thus, this Zionist state wants nothing more than to pull the wool over the eyes of the harmless. They try to explain that so many Jews have been found who want to go there as farmers, as workers, even as soldiers. And then it's noted people laugh. And if they really had to drive this drive within them, the German Reich would so desperately need these ideal people today to cut peat, to work in the coal mines. Then continuing on the bottom, they want to participate in the expansion of our great works, our water power, our lakes, etc. But that doesn't occur to them. The entire Zionist state is supposed to become nothing more than the final perfected university of their international scoundrelly. And everything is supposed to be directed from there. And every Jew is supposed to receive, so to speak, immunity as a citizen of the Palestinian state. And people laugh, right? Because it's true. It's not really funny, but at the time they didn't have a state. And incidentally, he naturally retains our citizenship right as well, right? Dual citizenships. But he achieves one thing with this. If you should ever catch um, no, why didn't it go over? Hmm. Well, anyway, I was supposed to say that he would be able to flee to the state of Israel. So I don't know why that got cut off. Well, that's annoying. Anyway, one can say, first of all, that the Jew cannot help it, that everything is rooted in his race. He cannot transcend it, and therefore it makes no difference whether the individual is good or evil. He must act exactly according to the law of his race, just as every member of our peoples does, from which he cannot detach himself. Just as even everyone who presents himself as the fiercest Spartacist actually sees today's German sheep, like good nature shining through, for he only directs his anger against a side other than the one he should be directed against. And he is good natured enough not to notice those who are leading him by the hand. Thus, the Jew everywhere is the Jew who, consciously or unconsciously, resolutely represents the interests of his race. We see that even here there are two major differences in race. Aryanism means a moral conception of work, and thus, what we so often talk about today, socialism, community spirit, the common good before self interest. Judaism means an egoistic conception of work, and thus mammonism and materialism, the very opposite of socialism. And in this characteristic, which he cannot transcend, which lies in his blood, he himself recognizes it. In this characteristic alone lies the necessity for the Jew to act in an unconditionally and maybe an unconditional state destroying manner. He cannot do otherwise, whether he wants to or not. As a result, he is no longer capable of forming his own state, for that more or less always presupposes a great deal of social feeling. As a result, it is only able to live at a Jew is only able to live as a parasite in other states. It, the Jew, lives as a race in other races, as a state in other states. And here we see quite clearly that the race in and of itself does not yet have a state forming effect unless it possesses very specific characteristics that must be inherent in the race, that must be innate to it by virtue of its blood, and that, conversely, a race that does not possess these characteristics must have a race and state destructive effect, regardless of whether the individual is good or evil. And that's interesting you state that because that goes back to uh, people always ask, well, not all Jews are bad or not all Jews are involved in a conspiracy. And no, obviously not all Jews are involved in the active conspiracy to take over the world. But as Hitler is pointing out, their very nature contradicts the way the white Christian race lives and the way the white Christian nations are. So they may not be trying to take over the world, but they just automatically undermine the culture and the fabric of our white Christian societies. So